House in Baltimore and WNST.net. A busy week around here, a bye week for the Ravens and trying to get some of their systems clean, as the song once said. This guy is up outside of Philadelphia where they have already started lining up for the parade, I'm sure, at this point. He is the longtime editor and one of the lead writers at Bleacher Report. You can find him at Mike Tanier out on Twitter. That's Tanier. And you can find him on Bleacher Report or anywhere the National Football League is served. Dude, I got to tell you, man, when Monday morning, when you were reviewing the tape out on Twitter and said, this Ravens-Titans tape is causing me actual pain, I said, you know what? This is going to be a good week to get Tanier on and find out what brings you this sort of pain. We're in pain here, too. We're 4-5.
To give you some idea of where that comes from, on Sunday, I watched like a bank of about 4 or 5 games. That's about all I can really watch. Otherwise, you're not really paying attention to anything. You pick the games carefully. I don't pick the Ravens anymore because I kind of know what I'm going to get. What you see is what you're going to get. I know you've won some games early in the season, but I don't think that they're going to be a storyline for the national audience. So they get relegated until Monday, and then Monday comes, and they're one of the first teams I turn on so I can get caught up and I can talk to you and some other people out there. And it's just more of the same. It's just an offense that's tedious and station to station and by the numbers and ineffective, but a defense that's good enough to make the other team kind of look just as bad. So the entire game it kind of causes a little bit of intestinal discomfort on Monday morning.
Well, and for us all afternoon on Saturday, and then I have to talk about it all week. And in this case, it's 2 weeks, and you certainly would like to go into Green Bay and a backup quarterback. Houston's coming down here; they're going to have a backup quarterback. It's not like all is lost here. I'm not the guy saying they can't win 9 games or 10 games because I see the soft part of their schedule. But I've also watched them get annihilated in Wembley. I've watched them lose to the Chicago Bears. This Tennessee effort was even more, I think, frustrating because the defense was the one that allowed the big drive that sort of slammed the door on them as the offense came back. But to your point, Macklin, Wallace, Watson, these are known quantities. This kid Collins runs the ball better than I think any of us thought he was going to be able to run the ball. And then it comes back to Flacco and the actual play calling when at the end of the game it's 22 runs and 52 throws and Joe Flacco running around out there and 52 attempts and 261 yards. It really is the same thing every week, right?
Yeah, well, you've got Flacco really inaccurate on some of the passes from the 10 to 20-yard range, which I never thought was really his sweet spot in his most productive times. He was either, throwing short or throwing those really deep outs and those deep sideline routes, of course, the bombs. So there's a lot of that. And play calling you talked about, not only is it too much passing, but, I'll sit and watch the tape and see how often all of the receivers are within the television frame. I'm not talking about all 22. Yeah, I'll get to that later. It's like when you get to the television frame and you can see Macklin, you can see Wallace, and you can see whoever else, which means they're only about 10 yards downfield. Everything's constricted, which means the defense doesn't have a lot of fear of the downfield game or of a vertical stretch, which means they can crowd the line more. So when you do run the ball, it's up to Alex Collins and the other guys to manufacture everything on your own, and you've got, safeties attacking the run lanes and guys charging into the run lanes, so it's really hard to run the ball. So all of that works together, and then when you talked about the receivers, you said, known commodities. Well, you've got an older veteran in Macklin. You've got a much older veteran in Watson. You've got sort of a career one-dimensional guy in Wallace whose best years are long behind him. And none of that is saying, okay, here's a playmaker. Here's somebody who's dynamic, who's going to be the focal point of this offense that we're going to make opponents' game plans for. The closest thing you got right now to that is Collins. And like you said, Collins doesn't get the ball enough because you throw the ball too often and you got a committee mindset in the running game.
Well, then the other problem, of course, is that Danny Woodhead's coming back, and we've been talking about him for 8 weeks now, and he made it to, 3 first downs and a couple of drives, or 1 drive, I would say. It didn't even make it to the end of that drive. And, week 10, week 11, he is that thing you're calling a savior for the offense, which is somebody that can do something other than what we've seen them do for 9 weeks, which is, throw to the tight end. And I see that, one of your recommendations was try to some flat passes to the tight ends. I've been seeing that's been the staple of the offense here. The real thing is that defensively, we've seen other teams make Ravens miss, right? Breaking tackles, being elusive, putting a juke on, putting a move on, beating someone into some space. we don't have any guys that creatively, this side of Danny Woodhead, who can do that, make somebody miss.
I think Collins can do a little of it, but you're right. None of the other guys got that. You don't have really that guy off the bench. I think Campanaro looked like he might be that guy whenever he's healthy, which is here and there. And again, with Woodhead, you're talking about another, I think he's 30, 31 years old. You're talking about another older guy, and you say the savior of the offense is going to be the older third down back. It takes more than that right now to get what you need going. You need real verticality. You need a real just a danger, and Wallace is not that guy right now. And if he is, I'm not sure Flacco is the guy who gets that deep ball anymore. And it's got to be systemic. So there are a couple of teams in the NFL I watch right now. I think the Broncos, who when they face the Eagles on Sunday, were another one. Is there's nothing downfield. Everything is station to station. You've got to go 80 yards. You've got to run 15 plays. And you've got to execute all of them. It's not a good way to do it in the NFL. The only way you can do it is if you have your Tom Brady out there or your Drew Brees who can pick away. You don't have that with Joe Flacco, you're going to be in trouble offensively.
Well, you mentioned the deep ball and you mentioned the vertical, and no one throws it better than Flacco. And then there's Brashad Perryman, who doesn't even go up to get the ball, or the ball bounces off the 1-and-1 up into the air as it did in the Bears game. He is quickly becoming a BUS and has the top line drawn for the T at this point. And I don't know how you pick yourself up from that when you draft for that position. And hey, on the other side, Corey Davis was going to be that guy for the Titans, and it was the first time he got on the field in 7 weeks.
Well, that's it, but he's in the first year of the system and working his way in, and now you're talking about Perriman in the third year, where it was a couple of years, I believe, of injuries that set back his development, and that's a red flag there. There's a couple of receivers who've been in that place. The Colts had a guy, Philip Dorsett, looked like the world beating the sprinter, coming out of college with the great separation. And if you don't get some kind of start and some kind of traction, it can set you behind in your development. So you're right. I don't see a lot of great anticipation, that ability to go up and get the ball, like you said. The great receivers, and I'm not talking about the great all-around receivers like Antonio Brown. I'm talking about the Deshaun Jacksons and guys like that. They know how to get that ball. They make adjustments in the air. Yeah, if it's a 50-50 situation, they get it. They've got that concentration. I know Perriman's going to be that guy right now. I have seen so little of him in his time in the NFL that I don't really have a good scouting report on him. I know that Mike Wallace really isn't that guy. I know he did it a couple of times. He'll get wide open once in a while and get you a freebie. But if you're counting on someone to be that person consistently, it's not going to be him. I don't think it's going to be Perriman, and I don't think that person's on the roster.
Mike Tanier is the NFL national lead writer at Bleacher Report. You can follow him at Mike Tanier. That's Tanier. He is out of the city of brotherly love up there on the Jersey side of Philly, kind of where the land of Joe Flacco, I like to say. This portion of our programming brought to you by our friends at King Discount Liquors, Lottery, Beer, Booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Get to Rosedale and give the King a ring. Don't forget about our friends over Costas Inn as well. Good enough for the Today Show and my mom. Fat Crabs, cold beer, celebrating the Dundalk High Hall of Fame nomination. The legend continues down in Dundalk, and they do ship for the holidays at CostasInn.com. Mike Tanier joining us here. You can find him at Mike Tanier as well as at Bleacher Report. And last thing on the Ravens, Morningwig, the offense, the bye week. We've seen firings and hirings and comings and goings in the past for John Harbaugh. We don't talk a ton about Morningwig here. I feel like the real blame goes to Ozzie, or it goes to John, or it goes to Flacco. But Morningwig has been the guy grooving this offense right now, and we really haven't seen anything of any note in the post-Kubiak era here, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out when Morningwig had this outstanding success. I saw him in the Andy Reid family of coaches, and underneath Andy's tutelage, run some good offenses out there. But when I've seen him in the Jets and elsewhere, I don't know what to hang the hat on, except it's kind of that old school West Coast offense, and that's what I see when I see them running slant flats, curl flats over and over again, and the ball goes to the tight end and the flat. So the one thing that's an issue right now for Morningwig in terms of offensive coordinator and firing offensive coordinators, there are about 15 teams right now that once you fire their offensive coordinator or their coordinator would be under siege right now. The Falcons come to mind because of Sarkisian and what's been going on with their offense, dropping from what it was during the Super Bowl. Mike Shula in Carolina, he gets a lot of talk about. The guy in the Raiders coordinator, he gets talked about a lot. The Bengals already got rid of their coordinator. Nobody's happy with their coordinator right now. I think teams have to look not necessarily at the coordinator, but the entire approach around that. Did you bring in an offensive coach who had a system that only works if Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers is running it? That's a legitimate question. Did he put something in place that needs the greatest offensive line, needs the hogs to run it, otherwise it will not be successful? I think a lot of teams put their systems in place for the ideal personnel grouping, but no team has the ideal personnel grouping, and so the entire system falls apart. You can blame the coordinator, but it's the mentality of the coaches overall, and it's the mentality of the organization that brought that guy in. So, we can slide Morningweg. He's in the same boat as about 15 other guys. There's a lot of teams in the NFL have to think about, this is our talent, this is how we're going to win, what can we do for our talent, rather than what can our talent do for us. And the teams that haven't figured that out, like the Ravens, either need that superstar quarterback or superstar playmaker, or they're not going to succeed. And right now, the Ravens on offense are not succeeding.
He is Mike Tanier. He is up in Philadelphia, where I don't even know that I'm kidding about printing Super Bowl tickets and all that stuff. I mean, the AFC is one thing, and I'll bring you back to that in a minute. But, boy, you're in a good spot up there in Philly, and there's joy up there, and there's obviously joy going on with the Rams, and they found themselves some quarterbacks. Minnesota's figuring it out at this point. The NFC has even the Saints, who I don't think anybody thought that defense was going to be able to play at this kind of a level and allow them to win, or Drew Brees getting up on this side of Tom Brady. But there are some good teams over in that NFC, but none better than the Eagles right now.
Well, I've already got my tickets for my flight to Minneapolis for the Super Bowl, so I am ready to go. So I'm on the bandwagon. Granted, I have to go cover it whether the Eagles are in it or not, but if people are going to jump on that bandwagon, you might be sitting next to me in some United plane from Philadelphia. But one of the things that's happening is, there's a lot of new blood in the NFC, where you see the Rams, you see the Eagles, you see the Cowboys, who I still consider new blood and still very much in the conversation, rising up. And what you see from the old guard here in the NFC is, you saw the Seahawks on Sunday. They tried to win another one of their ugly games against Washington, but Washington came back and Kirk Cousins threw a couple great passes and beat them at the end, and they're kind of scuffling a little bit. The Packers, obviously, without Aaron Rodgers, they're in trouble right now. So it's very likely that you're witnessing a changing of the guard in the NFC. You can throw the Saints in there, even though Drew Brees was old guard, because, again, it's been 4 years, like you said, with a bad defense, and now the defense is much stronger than it was. You're going to see new ideas. You're going to see new teams, I think, overtake some of that old guard in the NFC. Don't know if that's the case for the AFC, because so many teams in the AFC get to a certain level and stop, and they get glass ceilings beneath the Patriots and the Steelers over and over again, even as those teams start to fade. But you can definitely see in this conference that there are new teams, new attitudes, and you can see the way the Eagles are winning. You're right, there's a lot of enthusiasm, with good reason, because they got the coach, they got the quarterback, and they got the system now that's helping them succeed.
Yeah, we go to Green Bay in 2 weeks, and obviously they don't have a quarterback anymore. Detroit's coming in here in 4 weeks. They got a quarterback, but not much else. Seahawks wind up losing some improbable game where they stunk against the Redskins, which allows the Redskins into this thing. The wild card on that side's also going to be wild, but in the AFC right now, I mean, these teams all stink. The Ravens clearly stink at 4-5 right now. But that being said, backup quarterback Green Bay, backup quarterback with Houston. They're going to see Detroit here, the Pittsburgh game, which, we play well up there no matter what, it seems to me. And then the end of the season, this Cleveland, Jacoby Brissett, and then the Cincinnati Bengals at the end of the year actually coming here instead of going there. The Ravens are going to be a favorite in 5 or 6 of these football games between now and New Year's Day. Now, whether they win them or not, or who rolls out of bed and what fashion on those days. But if they don't get to 8 and they start losing the second-string quarterbacks, I would think that might be bad news for Ozzie Newsome and John Harbaugh at the end of this year.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when I was watching the film on Monday morning, I'm like, what is the guarantee that John Harbaugh and Newsome, what is the guarantee that this goes beyond this year? And I think the guarantee goes back to the fact that there's a lot of faith in the system with the ownership and that they're going to get another year no matter what. But you're right. If they're out there and they're losing to these backup quarterbacks and these other teams, and they lose an opportunity to at least compete for the wild card, there has to be significant questions there. Because you look at the wild card mix right now. You go below the top tier teams. It's anybody's game right now. And you're the team with the healthy quarterback, and you're the team that has enough of what you started the season with, your philosophy, that you should be able to go out there and compete. And the Ravens should be able to go out there and make a lot of 16-13 and 19-16. We've been watching this team long enough that we know it's a 5 field goal and 1 touchdown victories that they get. They should be able to do some of those. We saw them a couple of weeks ago. They're able to do that. If they're not able to do that against some of these foundering teams, you have to look at the future of the organization. The flip side is, if they do that a bunch of times, and they squeeze to 9-7, and they squeeze into the wild card, and have to go to Foxborough and get the daylights beat out of them or something like that. What's the end game there? But either way you look at it, I want to say, what is the future of this organization? Is it still Joe Flacco? If it's not Joe Flacco, what's plan B? Are they planning for plan B? And if it is Joe Flacco, it's Joe Flacco in who and what system? Those are all questions you have to ask right now, unless something magical happens and you become a powerhouse. Those are all the things you have to ask, because you're a veteran team, you're close to the salary cap, you got a quarterback who's kind of been on the downside, you've got a coaching staff that hasn't done it in a couple of years. You got to make those long-term decisions, not look at it and say, hey, we managed to squeak a wild card because we beat Tom Savage. Look at us. Let's keep staying the course and see what happens.
He is Mike Tanier. You can find him out at Bleacher Report. He's a national lead writer there, as well as at Mike Tanier, Tanier, out on Twitter. This portion of our programming brought to you by our friends at Deli-ish on Wise Avenue in Dundalk, the New York-style deli with Reuben's, corned beef, and legit sandwiches like the Curly Fryer. They cater in, and around the holidays, think of them, delibaltimore.com, and they're right over on Wise Avenue. Also, do not make that 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. Choose the right lender. That's Friedmont Mortgage. You can learn more at Friedmont.com. And I know Carl Delmont's going to be stopping by later on to talk a little Harrisburg Heat. The Pittsburgh Steelers sort of lay out there, as well as the New England Patriots, the next couple of weeks and saying, well, they are the best teams. Dude, I don't know who's going to come and get them. And I think in the AFC, we talked about the Raiders and the Broncos being very capable in the early part. It really is amazing 6 weeks into this thing how that whole division has fallen apart on this side, and how it really feels like no one can catch the Patriots or the Steelers, almost like baseball back in the summer, where no one was going to catch the Nationals, no one was coming to get the Dodgers, and I don't know that makes for the most interesting November and December, especially for those teams where it feels like they're going to coast to 10, 11, 12 wins more than anybody can get to at this point.
And that's what's weird about it, is that the teams that should be able to step up to it seem to be fighting themselves. We saw the Raiders kind of get a pretty good win on Sunday, but there's not a lot of faith in them, because you can see that their defense has problems. They have other issues there. You can see the Chiefs falling behind after having such a productive start. And all these teams reach a certain part and they crest and they fall off. Meanwhile, the Steelers and the Patriots churn their way through. They win these ugly games against opponents that are just like, oh my God, we're in Foxborough. What are we going to do? Let's make some bad plays. And they get these wins like that. So I don't know what it's going to take, because these are two very vulnerable AFC teams. These are not the Patriots that we saw really for the last 10 years, or the Steelers teams that you see at your absolute best. I'm starting to wonder, unless it just becomes those two in the championship again and everybody said, oh, we didn't have a chance, if it is going to be something like the Jacksonville Jaguars, where it takes Tom Coughlin, who has some giant killer capabilities from his days with the Giants against the Patriots in there, and something totally different, and something totally unexpected, and a team that doesn't know, after a decade of being terrible, doesn't know that it's supposed to go out there and be afraid against these opponents. I'm wondering if that's what it's going to take to get out there and finally shake things up in the AFC. Because make no bones about it, it needs to be a little bit of a shake-up there. Like you said, it gets boring for fans everywhere if it's going to be the same two teams, same three teams. Boring for fans in Baltimore, Nashville, Oakland, Denver, you name it, if they're not competitive against these opponents. And they should be, and it should be an opportunity for somebody to come along and say, look, these teams have real weaknesses, let's take them down.
It was interesting with the trading deadline last week, right? Teams making moves, and Jay Ajayi's running around into the end zone for the Eagles this week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of football that never existed for the longest time. And the last couple of years, I'm not expecting a Verlander, Yu Darvish kind of impact here,
no.
But certainly Ajayi can be a big part of doing this for the Eagles. He'll be running the football in January based on the fact that they're 8-1. He's going to play in January.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, if you asked these coaches about, mid-season trade, it's like, my system takes 3 years to learn. We need a full training camp together to, perfect the timing and the super perfection and blah, 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 and all of that stuff. And it's mostly bunk. Obviously, training camp helps, and knowing the system for a year helps. But to a great degree, you can plug guys in and get impact from them, like a running back who only has to know, like, inside zone, outside zone, hit the hole, or a pass rusher who needs to say, go get quarterback, attack, kill, destroy. You can do those things. So now I think a lot of GMs and coaches, plus they've looked at the analytics and they see what's possible. They're going to say, wait a minute, why are we going to be hidebound about this? Why are we going to not try and get better in mid-season when there's ways we can do it? A lot of teams have looked at that and they found that it's possible. And right now I think it's a little bit of disparity, because you're right, the Eagles figured out they could do that. Other teams stood pat, and we'll see what happens down the road if some teams said, man, we wish you pulled the trigger on that trade. We didn't, somebody else did, and that's why they're higher. They're in the playoffs and we're not.
Hey, man, I'm going to let you go back to being a run-and-gun gangster in a sad, restless age. Mike Tanier is one of the good ones. He's up there in the swamps of Jersey. Mike Tanier, Tanier, is a way to find him out on Twitter as well as at Bleacher Report. Always love talking football with you, Mike. Thanks for coming on, man.
Always a pleasure. Take care. Enjoy your week.
Keep the faith up there. Keep Schwartzy running clean and mean up there in Philadelphia. We got Baltimore guys scattered all over the place. So this week I am going to be scattered here talking about Terps basketball and Terps football and the Orioles offseason as well as the Ravens bye week, which is coming up. We're going to do a live show next Tuesday night with C.J. Mosley. I'll get you some more details on that coming up later in the week. We'll also be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry. So if you are not registered, next Tuesday is a beautiful night to do that with C.J. Mosley. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox, courtesy of our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. Last but never least, if there's any breaking news, anything big or weird happening here over the next 2 weeks of buy time, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. That is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis is going to be here on Thursday doing the bye week thing as well. I bet he'll be talking some MMA and who knows, whatever else. I'll be with him on Thursday talking bye week. It is the SSV on WNST. That's heard 3 until 5 each Thursday here at WNST.net. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.